The Vanishing Armada. The year was 2087, and Earth had grown used to the impossible. For over a decade, fleets of alien ships had appeared in Earth's orbit, watching, waiting, observing humanity from afar. At first, they had arrived in small numbers, lone vessels skimming the edges of the solar system. Then they came in larger groups, organized fleets that loomed over the outer colonies on Mars and Europa, their dark, monolithic forms blocking out the stars. The world had braced for war. But the war never came. The aliens had never attacked, nor had they spoken. No messages, no ultimatums, no signs of peace or hostility. Just silence, and that silence had unnerved Earth's leaders more than any battle ever could. The United Earth Confederation, UEC, humanity's unified government, had poured every resource into decoding the mystery of these visitors. Military analysts studied their formations. Linguists tried to decipher their ships' faint energy pulses, hoping they were some form of communication. Scientists proposed theories. Some believed the aliens were surveying humanity. Others suggested they were waiting for something. Then, one day, they vanished. The day the skies emptied. At precisely 2:13 UTC, the skies above Earth, once dotted with alien vessels, were empty. Every single ship, cruiser, and dreadnought that had lingered in orbit for years was gone. Not destroyed. Not moved. Just gone. There were no explosions, no visible jump signatures, no warning. One moment, they were there. The next, they weren't. Panic spread like wildfire. In the halls of the Earth Defense Command, alarms blared as analysts scrambled to make sense of the disappearance. Satellite feeds replayed the same footage over and over, dozens of ships hovering motionless over the planet. Then a single flicker of distortion, and nothing. Across the world, governments went into crisis mode. Military leaders feared the worst. Was this a retreat or a prelude to something greater? If the aliens had been studying Earth, had they found something that made them leave? Or were they preparing for an attack that humanity couldn't comprehend? The UEC president, Alexander Graves, held an emergency summit. Every world leader, every scientist, every military strategist gathered in the underground chambers of the Global Defense Council to discuss one thing. Where did the fleets go? The answer wouldn't come from Earth. It would come from the void itself. The signal from nowhere. 2 days after the disappearance, deep space satellites detected something new. A signal. It was faint, barely above the cosmic background noise, but it was there. A repeating pulse of energy coming from a region of space where no known planets or stars existed. The transmission wasn't random. It had structure, intent, intelligence, and most disturbingly, urgency. Dr. Evelyn Carter, Earth's leading xenolinguist, was the first to analyze it. She worked in a dimly lit research station aboard the UEC Sentinel, a deep space observation vessel stationed near the asteroid belt. The moment she saw the signal's wave patterns, she felt a chill run down her spine. "It's a distress call," she whispered. Her colleagues turned toward her in confusion. Dr. Raj Patel, a physicist, frowned. "How do you know?" She exhaled, adjusting her glasses as she pulled up the waveform on the main display. "This isn't random noise. The frequency shifts follow a deliberate pattern, like a beacon. And here," she pointed to a specific point in the signal structure. "This sequence repeats at regular intervals, but every repetition shortens, almost like a countdown." Patel's eyes widened. "A countdown to what?" Evelyn swallowed hard. "I don't know." The room fell into silence. Then, as if in response, the signal grew stronger. The shadows that remain. Earth's most powerful warship, the UEC Valkyrie, was dispatched to investigate. It was a Leviathan-class dreadnought, the pride of the human fleet, armed with rail cannons, plasma lances, and experimental energy shields capable of withstanding anything short of a supernova. If something was waiting out there, humanity wasn't going unprepared. Captain Marcus Redding, a veteran of deep space engagements, sat in his command chair as the Valkyrie approached the signal's coordinates. The crew was tense, their eyes locked on the main view screen as they neared the void. The region of space where the signal originated was known as Sector 49 Theta, an empty stretch of blackness between star systems. No planets, no asteroids, nothing. And yet, something was there. Captain, detecting mass readings ahead. Redding straightened. Visual. The screen flickered. Then, the darkness parted. Wreckage. Thousands of metal fragments, drifting lifelessly in the void. Some were massive. Twisted hulls of ships the size of cities, their exteriors burned and torn apart. Others were smaller, barely recognizable, as once being part of something greater. The remains of the alien fleets. The bridge went silent. Redding leaned forward. Scan for energy signatures. Are there any survivors? The AI assistant, HFY, responded in a cold, synthetic voice. Negative. No biological readings detected. No life signs present. It was a graveyard. The fleets that had once loomed over Earth had come here, only to be annihilated. But by what? The answer came as the ship's sensors detected something new, something lurking within the wreckage. A single, intact structure hovering in the dead center of the battlefield. It was not alien. It was not human. It was something else. The Valkyrie sensors struggled to lock onto it, as if its existence itself was bending reality around it. HFY's voice flickered with an unnatural distortion. Warning. Unknown anomaly detected. Classification. Undefined. The screen flashed. Then, the signal changed. It was no longer a distress call. It was a warning. And before Captain Redding could react, the anomaly opened its eyes. The beginning of the end. Back on Earth, the signal reached its final stage. Dr. Carter, still monitoring it aboard the Sentinel, felt her breath catch in her throat. The countdown had ended. Her screen filled with new symbols, the language unlike anything she had ever seen. But she understood it. Not through science, not through logic, but through pure, unexplainable terror. Her hands trembled as she translated the final message. It read, "You're in AVR, meant to see this." Then, the signal stopped, and all across Earth, the skies went dark. The awakening of the abyss. A graveyard in space. The UEC Valkyrie hovered in the heart of the battlefield, its massive frame dwarfed by the endless debris floating in the void. The once mighty alien fleets that had watched over Earth for decades had been obliterated, their shattered hulls drifting lifelessly in space like ghostly remnants of an unknowable war. And yet, no enemy ships were in sight. No weapons, no impact craters, no sign of a battle, just pure annihilation. Captain Marcus Redding clenched his jaw as he stared at the wreckage through the massive view screen. Something did this. Something powerful enough to erase entire armadas without a trace. "Report," he barked, his voice cutting through the tense silence. Lieutenant Aria Lang, the Valkyrie's chief sensor officer, scanned the wreckage. Her fingers trembled slightly as she analyzed the data streaming in. "Sir, there's no residual energy signatures, no radiation spikes, no plasma burns. It's like..." She hesitated. "Like what, Lieutenant?" Redding pressed. Lang swallowed. Like these ships were erased from existence. The bridge crew exchanged uneasy glances. That was impossible. Even the most devastating weapons left some kind of trace. Burnt-out reactor cores, twisted metal, lingering electromagnetic radiation. But here, nothing. Redding exhaled sharply. There has to be something. Debris patterns, data logs, escape pods. A new alarm blared through the bridge. "Captain, we have an energy surge." Lang's voice was tight with urgency. "It's coming from the anomaly." The anomaly speaks. The Valkyrie's view screen flickered, distorting for a brief moment before stabilizing. At the center of the wreckage, it emerged, A vast, impossible structure that had gone unnoticed until now. It was neither metal nor stone. It shifted unnaturally, its surface folding in on itself like a constantly morphing paradox of reality, as if space itself had been torn open to birth this thing into existence. Lang's fingers danced across her console. "Captain, it's massive. At least 20 kilometers in diameter. It wasn't there before." Redding narrowed his eyes. "You mean we didn't see it before?" Lang hesitated. "No, sir. I mean, it wasn't there before." The structure pulsed. Then the signal returned. A deep guttural tone rumbled through the ship, vibrating through every bulkhead, every console. It wasn't transmitted over any known frequency. It was inside the ship, inside their skulls. Redding winced, pressing his hands against his temples. It wasn't a sound. It was a presence. "Who is there?" The voice didn't speak in any language. It didn't use words. But they understood. Lang's breathing grew ragged. "Captain, this thing, it's aware of us." Redding forced himself to focus. Battle stations. Now. Kinetic shields flared to life. Rail cannons rotated into position. And the Valkyrie's AI, ECA-09, activated combat mode. But the anomaly did not attack. It merely watched. And then, in the void, something moved. The false stars began to move. Lang's eyes widened as she stared at the long-range sensors. "Captain," her voice was barely a whisper. "There's something behind the anomaly." The false stars began to move. One by one, the distant pinpricks of light, stars that had seemed motionless, began to shift, to twist, to unfold into something massive. They weren't stars at all. They were ships. No, not ships. Entities. Enormous, city-sized constructs unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. Their forms were fluid, shifting between organic and metallic, their surfaces covered in what looked like thousands of eyes. Blinking, watching, seeing. There was no energy output, no thrusters, no engines. And yet, they moved with purpose. ECA-09's voice crackled through the ship's intercom. "Warning. Unknown Sci-Fi creation. Threat reveal. UNDFFINE." Redding gritted his teeth. "Can you scan them?" ECH-09 hesitated. A machine, hesitating. "Insufficient data. Entities do not conform to known matter-energy interactions." Lang paled. "They don't register on any electromagnetic spectrum. No radio signals, no neutrino emissions, no thermal output. Captain, they shouldn't exist." But they did, and they were watching. The echo of extinction. The signal changed. No longer a transmission, it was now a warning. A message spoken through the fabric of reality itself. Evelyn Carter, still aboard the UEC Sentinel, gasped as she deciphered the last remnants of the signal. Her heart pounded in her chest as she whispered the translation. "They are the remnants, the forgotten, the ones that came before." She swallowed hard, forcing herself to continue. "They do not speak. They do not negotiate. They do not war." She felt a chill run down her spine as the final words revealed themselves. They erase. The first shot. Back aboard the Valkyrie, the air was thick with tension. The unknown entities continued to drift closer, their forms shifting like liquid shadows in the void. Redding clenched his fists. "We need to leave. Now." "Captain," Lang said, her voice a thin thread of fear. "They're charging something." A deep, vibrating hum filled the bridge as the nearest entity began to shift, its form stretching and warping like reality itself was breaking apart around it. Then it fired. There was no beam, no missile, no plasma blast, just silence. But the Valkyrie shook violently, alarms blaring as a piece of the ship's hull vanished. Not destroyed. Vanished. Like it had never existed. Lang gasped. "It's deleting us." ECH-09's voice was laced with something eerily close to fear. Immediate evacuation required. Redding didn't hesitate. Figulol RETRAT. Now, the Valkyrie's engines roared, kicking into emergency overdrive as it shot away from the anomaly at full burn. The entities did not follow. They simply watched. And as the Valkyrie's sensors flickered from the overwhelming distortion, one last message appeared on the screen. A final warning from something older than time itself. The Forgotten War. The escape into darkness. The UEC Valkyrie burned through the void at full speed, its engines roaring against the silence of space. Behind it, the entities remained motionless, watching, waiting. They had not pursued. They had not attacked again. But the damage had been done. Captain Marcus Redding sat rigid in his command chair, his mind racing. His ship, one of the most advanced war vessels humanity had ever built, had been erased as if it were nothing. A section of its hull had simply ceased to exist, not destroyed, deleted. And whatever these things were, they had no interest in war. Because war implied conflict. War implied struggle. This was something else entirely. Status. Redding barked, his voice cutting through the tension on the bridge. Lieutenant Aria Lang wiped sweat from her brow, her fingers flying across the interface. We're clear of the anomaly. For now. No pursuit. But Captain. Redding turned his sharp gaze toward her. What? Lang swallowed hard. The damage to our hull. She pulled up a holographic projection. It's not just missing metal. It's like the ship never had that section in the first place. The projection showed the ship's structural data, but something was missing. Not just the section that had been erased, but any memory that it had ever existed. Logs were corrupted. Blueprints had holes in them. Even the crew's memories were fading. Redding's jaw clenched. This was beyond destruction. This was something he couldn't comprehend, something that shattered the very fabric of reality itself. His grip tightened on the armrest. What the hell are we dealing with? ECH-09, the ship's AI, responded in its cold, mechanical voice. Threat classification. Undefined. This event does not conform to standard warfare. This is deletion. The bridge crew exchanged uneasy glances. They were soldiers, scientists, explorers. But this was beyond anything they had ever been trained for, and the entities had let them go. Why? The signal that should not exist. Back on Earth, Dr. Evelyn Carter sat in the dimly lit command room of the UEC Sentinel, her hands trembling as she stared at the decoded remnants of the alien transmission. They do not speak. They do not negotiate. They do not war. That was the message. The last desperate warning from whatever civilization had encountered these things before. A civilization that, by all accounts, no longer existed. Dr. Carter. The voice startled her. She turned to see Commander Leon Graves, a high-ranking intelligence officer with the UEC. His piercing blue eyes were locked on her, demanding answers. "What are we dealing with?" he asked. Evelyn exhaled shakily. "Something old." She pulled up the star map, pointing at the region of Sector 49 Theta, where the Valkyrie had encountered the anomaly. "There's nothing here. No stars, no planets. It was supposed to be empty space. And yet, she zoomed in. Now, where there had once been nothing, there was something faint. A hidden distortion, barely perceptible against the cosmic background. Graves frowned. "Is that a structure?" Evelyn's voice was a whisper. "No, it's a grave." Graves narrowed his eyes. "A grave." Evelyn nodded slowly. "There was once something here, a civilization, a fleet, maybe even an entire empire. But now, it's gone. Like it was never there to begin with. That's why we never saw it before, because it was erased." Graves ran a hand through his short, graying hair. If these things are capable of wiping out entire civilizations, why haven't they done the same to us? That was the question that haunted Evelyn the most. She took a deep breath. Maybe they're not here for us. Maybe we just stumbled onto something we were never meant to see. She turned to face him, eyes dark with dread. And now they've noticed us. The Forgotten War. The Valkyrie's long-range sensors had picked up something new. A structure drifting in the debris field. Unlike the alien wreckage, this object was still intact. It was massive, over 300 kilometers in length, a twisted, hollowed-out ring of metal and stone, floating through the void like the broken remains of something once powerful. HFY processed the readings. Material composition suggests human origin. Redding's blood ran cold. Repeat that. HFY hesitated. The structure contains elements that match human alloys. Estimated age, over 1 million years old. Silence fell over the bridge. That's impossible, Lang murmured. Humanity has only been exploring space for a few hundred years. Redding's fingers tightened around his console. Unless. Lang turned to him. Unless we weren't the first. The bridge crew stared at the massive, ancient ruin, their minds grappling with the implications. Had humanity been here before? Had there been a civilization before theirs, wiped away by the same forces they had just encountered? The Valkyrie scanners picked up something else. A signal. It was weak. Old. A repeating distress beacon, still playing after what could have been 1,000,000 years. Redding exhaled sharply. Patch it through. Static filled the bridge. Then, a faint, broken voice. Distorted by time, its meaning almost lost. But 3 words were clear. 3 words that sent a shiver down every spine. They are coming. Then, silence. Nowhere left to run. Back on Earth, Evelyn Carter felt a chill as her computer suddenly flickered. The alien signal that had gone silent returned. Except this time, it wasn't alien. It was human. Hundreds of thousands of overlapping voices, whispering in the dark. Their words came from nowhere and everywhere, spoken in a language that should not exist. And among them, Evelyn heard her own voice. A recording she had never spoken. They are awake. Then, a single final message. A warning. A prophecy. A sentence carved into the very fabric of existence itself. You were never meant to be here.